On a warm early summer evening in Washington, D.C., the upscale restaurant The Capitol View was abuzz with anticipation. Known for its elegant decor, refined service, and breathtaking views of the city's skyline, the restaurant had long been a favorite haunt for diplomats, business moguls, and political figures. Tonight, however, an unexpected twist was about to disrupt the usual smooth operation. Melania Trump, visiting on a private matter, was dining in a secluded VIP room. Her presence, as always, commanded respect and captured the attention of every patron and staff member alike. Melania sat at a table adorned with white linens and tasteful floral arrangements, her attire immaculate and her poise unwavering. The private dining area, decorated with modern art and subtle lighting, created an atmosphere of understated luxury. Yet, beneath the calm exterior of this elite setting, tension simmered. The restaurant staff, trained to cater to the highest echelons of society, moved with precision and quiet professionalism. However, as fate would have it, a single moment was about to upend this carefully curated scene. Jonathan Mitchell, a relatively young server who had only recently joined the team at the Capitol View, was assigned to attend to the VIP guests. He had come from a modest background in suburban Maryland and was eager to prove himself. But that evening, the pressure was overwhelming. In the midst of a hectic service, Jonathan found himself juggling multiple tables and trying to meet the sky-high expectations of the restaurant's distinguished clientele. His nerves, already frayed by long hours and personal struggles, were stretched thin. At one point, while carefully taking an order from a table near the VIP room, Jonathan caught sight of Melania's composed yet observant expression. In what seemed to be an attempt at casual conversation, he approached her table to confirm a detail about her order. Yet what transpired in those few moments would become a turning point in his life. Misreading her tone and perhaps overwhelmed by the pressure of the moment, Jonathan blurted out a remark that was not only unprofessional but downright insulting. His words, delivered in a tone laced with frustration, echoed across the quiet dining area. Immediately, the atmosphere in the room shifted from refined calm to palpable shock. A murmur of discontent spread among the diners, and several guests instinctively reached for their smartphones, capturing the incident on video. Conversations halted, and every eye was fixed on the unfolding drama. Melania's reaction was a study in restrained fury. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she regarded Jonathan, whose face had drained of color, reflecting the gravity of his misstep. In that brief moment, the reputation of the Capitol View and the dignity of its guest were both in jeopardy. Within seconds, the restaurant manager, Mr. Robert Hayes, a seasoned professional with decades of experience in fine dining, rushed to the scene. His presence was meant to restore order, yet his expression betrayed concern. He attempted to intervene, asking Jonathan for an explanation while trying to shield Melania from further embarrassment. Despite his efforts, the damage was done. Whispers and incredulous glances circulated among the guests, and the tension in the air was unmistakable. The incident was not contained within the walls of the restaurant. As the first videos and posts made their way onto social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, the scandal exploded into a full-blown crisis. Hashtags such as #CapitolScandal and #RespectMelania trended nationally, as thousands of Americans debated the appropriateness of Jonathan's behavior. Was it a case of an overworked employee snapping under the pressure of a high-stakes environment, or a deliberate display of disrespect toward one of the nation's most recognizable figures? Questions swirled, and opinions clashed in real time. Within minutes, local news channels set up live reports outside the Capitol View, interviewing stunned diners and passers-by. Experts in hospitality and public relations were quickly consulted to provide context for the mishap. They stressed that the modern digital age left no room for isolated errors. Every misstep, no matter how brief, was magnified through the lens of social media. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, the incident had already begun to erode the carefully maintained aura of exclusivity and decorum. As the evening wore on, the initial shock slowly gave way to a more measured, if uneasy, calm. Yet the repercussions of that single moment would ripple far beyond the confines of the restaurant. For Jonathan Mitchell, that fateful lapse in judgment was the culmination of years of mounting stress, personal hardships, and a relentless drive to succeed in an environment that offered little grace for error. And for Melania Trump, the incident underscored a familiar truth, that even in the most controlled settings, public figures are perpetually vulnerable to unexpected challenges. The scandal at the Capitol View was not merely an isolated event. It was a flashpoint that revealed the complexities and contradictions inherent in American society, where perfection is expected and even a fleeting misstep can ignite a national debate. The fallout from the incident at the Capitol View was instantaneous and widespread. Almost as soon as Jonathan's unfortunate remark echoed through the private dining room, smartphones lit up, and social media platforms were inundated with live footage, commentary, and heated debates. In an era where every moment is instantly recorded and disseminated, the scandal quickly morphed into a national conversation. Hashtags like #CapitolScandal and #MelaniaMatters were trending, with influencers, bloggers, and everyday citizens weighing in on the breach of etiquette that had taken place in one of the nation's most prestigious dining establishments. Newsrooms across the country shifted into high gear. Reporters from prominent television networks and online media outlets raced to the scene, eager to cover every detail. In newsrooms filled with urgency, editors convened impromptu meetings to decide on headlines and live coverage strategies. The scandal was no longer just about a single comment. It had become a symbol of a broader conversation about respect, professionalism, and the pressures faced by service workers in upscale environments. Analysts debated whether this was a momentary lapse of judgment or indicative of deeper systemic issues in the hospitality industry. Local news channels began broadcasting live updates from outside the Capitol View, capturing the reactions of bystanders and diners who had witnessed the incident firsthand. Several guests, visibly shaken, recounted their versions of the event, describing the sudden shift in atmosphere from one of refined elegance to one of palpable tension. "I couldn't believe what I heard," one diner said, her voice trembling as she explained how a simple mistake had evolved into a public spectacle. Another guest mentioned how the silence that followed was almost deafening, punctuated only by the incessant tapping of smartphone screens as people recorded every moment. Online, the debate was fierce. Social media commentators dissected every nuance of Jonathan's tone, his body language, and even the decor of the restaurant, attempting to reconstruct the incident with forensic precision. Some defended Jonathan, arguing that the relentless pressure of working in a high-stress environment could lead anyone to a breaking point, while others condemned the remark as utterly disrespectful, especially given Melania's stature and the immaculate standards expected at such an establishment. This digital maelstrom underscored the fact that in today's interconnected society, no event remains private for long. Every action is amplified, scrutinized, and shared with a global audience. Public relations experts weighed in on the crisis management aspect of the unfolding drama. This is a textbook example of how social media can take a localized incident and turn it into a national scandal within minutes, one PR strategist explained during a televised panel discussion. He noted that the rapid dissemination of information meant that every word, every gesture, had to be managed meticulously by the establishment's management team. "In this digital age, reputations are made or broken in the span of a few seconds," he added, emphasizing the need for swift, transparent, and sincere communication in the wake of such events. As the initial shock subsided, a more structured narrative began to form. The restaurant management released a brief statement expressing regret over the incident and promising a thorough internal investigation. However, for many, this was too little, too late. Critics accused the management of damage control rather than genuine accountability, questioning whether a single apology could ever restore the shattered trust of both patrons and the wider public. The incident sparked heated discussions not only about individual behavior but also about the larger issues of workplace stress, the dehumanizing pace of modern service jobs, and the unyielding expectations placed upon those who serve America's elite. In living rooms and cafes across the country, ordinary Americans engaged in spirited debates about respect, entitlement, and the human cost of working in high-pressure environments. Talk shows dedicated segments to analyzing the incident, inviting both experts and everyday workers to share their perspectives. Some argued that the scandal was emblematic of a society that demands perfection from its public figures and its service providers alike, while others felt that it was a minor misstep blown wildly out of proportion by a media landscape hungry for sensational content. The digital footprint of the scandal was enormous. Videos capturing Jonathan's fateful comment were shared thousands of times, with every replay reigniting discussions and fueling a frenzy of opinions. Memes and satirical posts emerged, further complicating the narrative and highlighting the divide between those who sympathized with the pressures of the hospitality industry and those who viewed the incident as a glaring failure of decorum. The speed at which the scandal spread demonstrated that in America's media ecosystem, no mistake goes unnoticed, and every misstep becomes a catalyst for broader cultural debate. Ultimately, the reaction of the public and media was a reflection of the complexities of modern American society. In a nation where every moment is captured, analyzed, and shared, the incident at the Capitol View served as a stark reminder that even in the most prestigious settings, human error is inevitable, and when it occurs, its consequences are magnified far beyond the confines of the immediate environment. The rapid, multifaceted response from social media, news outlets, and public forums set the stage for the next phase of the story, as the fallout from that single comment continued to reverberate throughout the nation. To understand the origins of the scandal at the Capitol View, one must delve into the life of Jonathan Mitchell, the young server whose ill-timed remark would soon be dissected by a nation. Born and raised in a modest town in suburban Maryland, Jonathan's life was a tapestry of hardships and modest dreams. Growing up in a blue-collar family, he learned early on the value of hard work. His father worked long shifts at a local manufacturing plant, while his mother juggled multiple jobs to keep the household afloat. Despite these challenges, Jonathan was instilled with a sense of ambition and the belief that he could rise above his circumstances. In school, Jonathan was known as a quiet but determined student. While he wasn't the most outgoing, he possessed an earnest desire to succeed and a knack for connecting with people, an attribute that eventually led him to the service industry. He believed that charm, courtesy, and attention to detail were keys to winning over customers and opening doors to a better life. Yet, behind his polite exterior lurked a growing pressure. His early forays into customer service were marked by moments of genuine warmth, but as he progressed in his career, the relentless pace of work and the ever-increasing demands of upscale establishments began to take a toll on him. Jonathan's journey into the high-stakes world of fine dining was not an easy one. After several years working at smaller local restaurants, he was offered a position at the Capitol View, a chance to serve some of the nation's most influential patrons. Initially, the opportunity filled him with pride and hope. However, the transition was not smooth. The new environment was fraught with high expectations, strict protocols, and an atmosphere where every interaction was scrutinized. The pressure to perform flawlessly each night quickly became overwhelming. Colleagues recalled that Jonathan, once known for his friendly smile and calm demeanor, began to exhibit signs of stress, slight tremors in his hands, a furrowed brow during rush hours, and a tendency to overreact when faced with minor criticisms. As the weeks turned into months, the cumulative effects of long hours, demanding customers, and the constant drive for perfection started to weigh heavily on him. Jonathan's personal life, already marked by a series of disappointments and lost opportunities, offered little respite. His relationships were fleeting, and his attempts at forging lasting bonds were continually undermined by a persistent sense of inadequacy. Social isolation and the pressure to meet the high standards of his job created a simmering cauldron of frustration inside him. Every slight rebuke, every hurried comment from a manager, chipped away at his confidence, leaving him feeling both unseen and unappreciated. In private moments, Jonathan grappled with the realization that his life was not turning out as he had hoped. His ambition, once a beacon of promise, now felt like an unrelenting burden. The relentless pace of the restaurant's operations left little time for self-reflection or for seeking the help he so desperately needed. Colleagues who had once admired his dedication now whispered about the mounting signs of burnout. His internal struggles, compounded by the high expectations of serving America's elite, created an environment where emotions ran dangerously high. On that fateful night at the Capitol View, all of these pressures converged. As Jonathan made his way to Melania Trump's table, a moment that should have been routine, it became evident that the cumulative stress and personal discontent had reached a breaking point. In a split second, the carefully constructed facade of professionalism shattered. His words, unguarded and laced with pent-up resentment, were the culmination of years of internal conflict. They were not the result of a calculated attack, but rather the explosive release of emotions that had been bottled up for far too long. The aftermath of that single remark quickly spread far beyond the restaurant. While many viewed it as an isolated lapse in judgment, those who knew Jonathan recognized it as the tragic end of a long unspoken battle against a system that demanded perfection at any cost. His personal struggles, hidden behind a veneer of polite professionalism, were now thrust into the harsh light of national scrutiny. In many ways, Jonathan's story served as a microcosm of a broader issue in America: the cost of unyielding expectations and the human toll of a high-pressure service industry. It was a stark reminder that behind every polished uniform and every courteous smile, there could be an individual fighting a quiet war against stress, isolation, and the fear of failure. Thus, the scandal at the Capitol View was not merely a momentary lapse. It was the tipping point of a life marred by accumulated stress and unmet emotional needs. Jonathan Mitchell's journey, filled with personal disappointments and relentless pressure, became an unintended cautionary tale about the importance of mental health support, empathy in the workplace, and the dire consequences that can arise when human vulnerabilities are pushed to their limits. In the wake of the scandal at the Capitol View, Melania Trump found herself in an unanticipated crisis. Known for her calm demeanor and measured approach, she was suddenly forced to navigate a situation that threatened not only her personal dignity but also the carefully cultivated image of grace and sophistication. Within minutes of the incident, as the news spread through social media and traditional outlets alike, Melania's inner circle mobilized swiftly to contain the damage and chart a path forward. Immediately after the incident, Melania requested that her personal assistant escort her to a private conference room located off the main dining area. This secure space, away from prying eyes and microphones, became the temporary command center for what would soon evolve into a full-scale crisis management operation. In that quiet room, adorned with minimalist decor and subdued lighting, Melania met with her closest advisors, including her press secretary, a trusted legal counsel, and senior members of her public relations team. The atmosphere was charged with urgency. Every word spoken in that room was measured carefully, as each decision would have far-reaching consequences on public perception. Melania's initial reaction was one of controlled disappointment. In a private conversation with her team, she expressed that while she understood the pressures that service employees often face, there is a fundamental expectation of respect when interacting with high-profile individuals. Her message was clear: such behavior, however fleeting, undermined the principles of courtesy and professionalism that she valued deeply. This discussion laid the groundwork for the multi-pronged strategy that her team would soon implement. The first step in the crisis response was the issuance of a carefully crafted public statement. Drafted by her press secretary, the statement acknowledged the incident without delving into unnecessary details. It stressed the importance of mutual respect, both in personal interactions and in public life. The statement also assured the public that an internal review was underway, not only at the restaurant but within the protocols of guest relations at similar establishments. Although measured in tone, the statement left little doubt that Melania was deeply disturbed by the incident and was determined to ensure that such an episode would not be repeated. Simultaneously, her team engaged in an intensive round of behind-the-scenes negotiations. Legal experts were consulted to explore all possible avenues for redress, while crisis management specialists outlined protocols for managing the media's relentless pursuit of sensational details. In closed-door meetings, strategies were discussed to shift the narrative from one of scandal to one of accountability and constructive change. There was consensus that while the incident was regrettable, it could also serve as a catalyst for raising awareness about the challenges faced by service workers and the need for improved training and support systems. Throughout this process, Melania maintained a public persona of unwavering composure. In a private interview with a select group of respected journalists, those granted access only after signing strict confidentiality agreements, she articulated her views on the importance of empathy and accountability. "I believe in the dignity of every person," she remarked, "but I also believe that those who serve in high-pressure environments must adhere to the standards of decorum that their positions demand." Her measured tone resonated with many, even as critics questioned whether her calm response was a veneer masking underlying hurt. Nevertheless, her stance underscored a fundamental principle: that public figures, regardless of their status, are entitled to a respectful environment. Behind the scenes, Melania's advisors were also working on long-term strategies. Meetings were convened with representatives from the restaurant industry to discuss potential reforms in training and stress management for service staff. These discussions were not merely reactive, but part of a broader initiative to set new benchmarks for professional conduct in upscale dining establishments. The goal was to turn the scandal into an opportunity for meaningful change, one that would not only restore public confidence in the restaurant but also contribute to better working conditions across the industry. Throughout the ordeal, the media spotlight was relentless. Every day, headlines dissected the nuances of the incident, often sensationalizing details and speculating on what might have driven Jonathan Mitchell to his breaking point. Despite this, Melania's team remained steadfast. They released follow-up statements, held controlled press conferences, and even arranged private briefings for influential media figures, all aimed at ensuring that the narrative remained balanced and focused on accountability rather than pure scandal. In doing so, they demonstrated an exemplary model of crisis management that was both swift and thoughtful, a model that many PR professionals later cited as a case study in effective response under pressure. In the end, Melania Trump's measured and proactive response, combined with her team's comprehensive strategy, managed to mitigate some of the immediate damage. While the incident had already ignited a national debate on respect, accountability, and the pressures of service work, the steps taken in the hours and days following the scandal helped steer the conversation toward constructive change. Her actions not only reaffirmed her commitment to dignity and decorum, but also set a precedent for how public figures can, and should, respond when confronted with challenges that strike at the very core of personal and professional integrity. What began as a single misstep in the elegant dining room of the Capitol View evolved into a national conversation that reverberated across boardrooms, social media feeds, and political debates. In the days and weeks following the incident, it became evident that the repercussions were far-reaching, altering not only the reputation of the famed restaurant but also reshaping public perceptions regarding professionalism, respect, and the pressures inherent in America's service industry. One of the first noticeable outcomes was an industry-wide reckoning. In response to the scandal, the Capitol View initiated a series of internal investigations aimed at understanding how such a breach of protocol could have occurred. The review revealed gaps in training programs, particularly in managing the emotional stress of high-stakes environments. As a result, the restaurant embarked on an ambitious overhaul of its internal policies. New training modules were introduced, emphasizing conflict resolution, stress management, and the importance of maintaining decorum under pressure. Industry experts hailed these reforms as a significant step forward, advocating for their adoption across other high-end dining establishments nationwide. The scandal, though painful, had spurred a vital conversation about the need for systemic changes in the hospitality sector. The fallout extended beyond the walls of the restaurant. Public opinion shifted dramatically as the narrative evolved from an isolated act of unprofessionalism to a broader critique of the service industry's culture. Consumers began demanding higher standards of care, not only in elite dining venues but in every facet of customer service. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions about employee well-being, fair working conditions, and the importance of empathy in professional interactions. Hashtags such as #ServiceStandards and #RespectInService became rallying cries for those who believed that the incident was symptomatic of larger issues affecting American workplaces. Political commentators and sociologists weighed in on the scandal's broader implications. Panels on major cable news networks discussed how a single moment of lapse by one individual could ignite widespread debate about respect and accountability. Many argued that the incident was emblematic of a society that, in the age of digital immediacy, demanded perfection from its public figures and frontline workers alike. Academic studies were soon commissioned to analyze the interplay between workplace stress, media scrutiny, and public perception, contributing to a growing body of research on the human cost of high-pressure service jobs. For Melania Trump, the scandal proved to be both a personal and a public challenge. Her response, characterized by measured composure and a call for accountability, resonated with many Americans who appreciated her dedication to dignity even in the face of adversity. Her subsequent public appearances and carefully managed press interactions served to reinforce the narrative that respect is non-negotiable, regardless of one's role in society. In interviews and opinion pieces, experts cited her crisis management as a model of how high-profile figures could handle unexpected challenges without succumbing to the pressures of a hyper-connected media landscape. Meanwhile, the restaurant's reputation, once synonymous with impeccable service, faced a period of intense scrutiny. While some loyal patrons continued to defend the establishment, others found themselves questioning whether one incident could signal deeper, systemic flaws. Customer reviews became more discerning, with many calling for greater transparency regarding staff training and management practices. Over time, the pressure from both critics and supportive voices led to tangible changes within the restaurant industry. A wave of reforms swept through upscale dining establishments, as managers recognized that maintaining a pristine image required not only culinary excellence but also robust support systems for their employees. In the political arena, the scandal contributed to renewed debates about the nature of respect in public life. Analysts pointed out that in an era where every word is broadcast to millions, even minor infractions could have major consequences. The incident at the Capitol View became a case study in the delicate balance between individual responsibility and systemic pressures, a narrative that resonated deeply in a country grappling with questions about accountability, mental health, and the cost of maintaining perfection. Ultimately, the long-term consequences of that fateful night extended far beyond the immediate scandal. The lessons learned spurred improvements in employee training, crisis management, and even in the broader cultural conversation about respect and dignity in the workplace. What began as an isolated incident transformed into a catalyst for widespread reform. The public's insistence on higher standards forced establishments to rethink their internal practices and invest in the well-being of their staff, fostering a more compassionate and sustainable work environment. In this way, the legacy of the scandal was not solely one of controversy, but also of progress, a demonstration of how, In America's fast-paced, interconnected society, even the most painful setbacks can eventually lead to meaningful change.